On today's episode of Stupid Things That Atheists Say, I'm going to talk about For Good People to Do Evil Takes Religion. Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. To begin with, I want to make say the same thing I say in all the beginnings of these things, that I'm not saying that all atheists are stupid. I am looking at stupid things that atheists say. That is to say that more than one atheist has said, and that these things are stupid. Not that the person is necessarily stupid, though some of them have been, certainly in my experience. And not that all atheists say these things. So to be clear, I'm talking about stupid things I have seen a lot that have been said by atheists, and not generalizing to all of atheists really in any way. If you want to, for example, see an intelligent atheist, a highly intelligent atheist, check out Zarathustra's Serpent. He runs a YouTube channel. I've actually had him on my channel talking with him multiple times. Really smart guy. He's a Nietzschean, so it's not particularly a shock there. The best atheists will be Nietzscheans. So the smartest atheists will be Nietzscheans. I mean, anyway. So yeah, I want to be clear on that because this is the internet, right? A lot of people are going to miss that, despite the fact that I say it explicitly anyway. But, for those who are paying attention. Okay, so the thing I'm going to say today, or talk about today, was said, or when I looked this up, it tends to get attributed to a Steven Weinberg, who said the impressively dumb version of this. I've seen a lot of different versions. With or without religion, good people can behave well and bad people can do evil. But for good people to do evil, that takes religion. Okay, and now every part of this is pretty dumb. The first and simple thing is that there aren't good people and bad people. I mean, you can make a decent argument, if you like, that there are only bad people. There are no good people. It's not even a meaningful phrase. And what he's doing here, because the thing is, human beings are composite entities, and we exist in time, and we do multiple different things. So if you want to define a good person as a person who does only good, then there are none of them. Just because it's come up before, when I say good here, just take some of the basics that common sense recommends, things like always being generous and honest and brave and loyal and so on. Like, a person who only ever does those things and is never lazy and never lies and is never dishonest, never does anything but tries to communicate the truth as best as they're able to everybody they interact with. You don't find any human beings who actually live up to that standard. So let me look at this again. The good people can behave well and bad people can do evil. And again, all people are bad, and so this is stupid. Just straight from the get-go, you can't define these terms in any sort of reasonable way to make this work out. But for good people to do evil, that takes religion. This only works basically if you define these terms like a complete moron. You'd have to define good people to mean, roughly speaking, people who conform sufficiently to the culture that I like. To do evil, meaning to cease to conform to the culture that I happen to like, requires religion. That is to say, a religion which is not part of my culture, or that is not part of this culture that I like. Well, okay, yeah, but that's stupid. That's just so phenomenally stupid, because this is, say the culture that he likes involves the ability to break promises, and say somebody, joins a religion in which keeping your promises is actually important, and so he's not just happy to break promises anymore. This is a good person doing evil because of religion, according to this moron. And I bet you, by the way, when I say that, when I say promise, think of wedding vows. This guy almost guaranteedly, I don't know for sure, but nearly 100% certainty, approves of divorce. That is to say, approves of breaking marriage vows. So, I don't really believe. It's, as I said, it's possible. Maybe he actually believes that marriage vows, if you make some vow like "till death do us part," that actually means "till death do us part," not, we said that, but who the hell cares about that? Let's just do whatever we feel like, regardless of what our vows actually are. Yeah, the odds of this guy being a good person for anything but a stupid definition of good person are not radically high here, making it suspect even in itself. This particular guy doesn't matter, though. I've seen this sentiment echoed by a lot of people who don't attribute it to him. Of course, they're all basically the same. I don't believe any of these people, individually speaking, have been good people to any sort of high standard of good. I believe they're good people to the standard of I fit into my culture. Whoop-de-fricking-do. So, yeah, it's kind of distractingly stupid when you get down to it. But so getting to the thing. So like right off the bat, you can't define good people in a way that actually usefully applies to people unless you define it down to such a radical level. And then you define religion again. But like the problem there is all it means is that in order to, like, you can be a part of your culture as long as you're a part of your culture, but if you start to join some other culture, you won't be a part of your culture. And like, yeah, no kidding. Maybe you're joining a better culture. This is a conflation of good, as in the actual moral concept of good as distinct from evil. And he uses the word evil. He uses the word good for that matter. With essentially cultural conformance. Like, am I sufficiently conformed to like what my culture expects of me that they're not going to completely throw me out of it or throw me in prison or what have you? And to some degree, but like the it's so incredibly useless. You can't do anything with this definition because it's a purely retrospective definition. Under this kind of definition, being a good person just means you're a person who has done good things. So saying a person who has done good things has done good things or had the potential to do good things, it's empty. It's completely empty. And similarly, if you define bad person simply as a person who does bad things, in this way, like, again, it becomes completely empty in that, like, a person who has done bad things was able to do bad things. So, I mean, you can't define, there's no definition that makes this whole thing, it's one of those things that, like, can either be, if you work your definitions carefully, you might be able to make it absolutely trivial and, to the point of being approximately meaningless, like the first rule of tautology club is the first rule of tautology club. And under any reasonable definition of these terms, it's just stupid. It's not even really, it barely rises to the level of being wrong. Amongst other things, it completely leaves out the fact that there is such a thing as people repenting, as people who do bad things, realizing that they've done bad things because they see some higher good and turn away from the bad things towards that higher good and amend their lives and do better. And there are plenty of examples of people who do that, especially under the influence of a religion that calls them to be better than they are. So, like just utterly ignoring that is idiotic too. And, so if you try to amend this with, but for good people to do bad things, that doesn't require religion, for one thing. All it requires is fucking temptation. I mean, the sheer level of knowing nothing about human beings on display here is really quite impressive, because you can have people who do good things and they're subject to a temptation they hadn't been subject to before, and they give into it and now do something bad. And, that can easily be, take some, I don't know, a lot of modern people have such incredibly low standards. I don't even know. Like, most of the time, like, they try to define being good down to not committing mass murder or something really extreme. Because, I mean, these days, many of these atheists, I don't think you could get them to agree that cheating on your wife would be bad. Maybe you might be able to get them to agree to that. But a lot of them will probably tell you that, like, that's really just a holdover from Christian ethics and something or other. I mean, they've been a little bit of a sticky spot. But, I mean, here's the thing. there are people who go along being faithful to their wife. Then they meet somebody, then they have some trouble with their wife. They meet somebody who's a lot nicer to them, and they give in to temptation. And they didn't join a religion that said that cheating is bad. They simply were tempted. They were in a circumstance where doing something bad seemed incorrectly to them within, the myopia that they were suffering at the time to be good. And so they did it. And then maybe they regret it, or maybe they defend it, or whatever. But nonetheless, this is how human beings actually work. That's freaking moron. The idiots who say this, it is, you kind of want to ask them, have you ever met human beings? Have you learned anything about how human beings actually work? Have you looked into any actual history of the behavior of human beings? What freaking planet do you guys live on? So, yeah, it's everything about this is just so unrelated to reality. It's kind of impressive. Yeah. To some degree, I think this kind of gained a certain amount of prevalence. And indeed, I have a video on the new atheism. So the original, well, it's basically new atheism, and was never new, but it's also especially not new now. But the sort of thing where you have like Dawkins and Hitchens and so on, and the surge in popularity of them and that sort of way. And that really, I have a video about the Four Horsemen, and in my contention that, to a great degree, it was actually a response to September 11th, where you find a lot of people who wanted to criticize Islam, but they couldn't criticize Islam because a lot of people who are Muslims are ethnically distinct and from a non-European region. And as a result, they couldn't just directly criticize the thing itself because they were afraid of being called racist, and so they had to criticize all religion. And I suspect this was a lot of it, and part of why you see so much of the new atheism more or less completely losing its steam once the global war on terror was approximately over. It was over in the sense of no longer being in anybody's attention, not being in headlines, when you're not reading about terrorist bombings or beheadings or anything like that anymore in the news. Then all the energy seemed to go out of it, and you're left with a few small sort of holdover channels for people who are in it for somewhat different reasons, like on YouTube and, more generally. And I think that's the case. And so to some degree, this is intended in a sense, I suppose, as really being about Islam, and about, Islamic terrorists rather specifically. So, trying to say that, they're trying to criticize it, in calls for jihad and that type of, expansionist Islam. So there's some element, I think, in which it's sort of intended to be about that. It largely isn't anymore. To some degree, you still see it sort of being glommed onto by people who dislike the politics of religious people or various kinds of religious people. The more, the more, really in many ways, it's really not so much right to call them religious people as to call them supernatural religious people, as distinct from secular religious people, because there are obviously a bunch of secular religions at this point that exist. So that are popular because there are very, very few people. There are a few people who seem to be able to exist without a religion, sort of, and for a while, but most people can't, and so if they're deprived of it, they just make up their own, tend to do a pretty bad job of it. And for various reasons, they're often, at least, quasi-secular religions. One of the things, this gets to my video on how most religions don't look like Christianity, it's actually pretty rare for priests to be philosophers. It is rare for religious people to pay attention to the philosophers. That's an unusual aspect of Christianity. So, I don't expect most religions to even have a supernatural secular distinction that they have as a concept. They're not going to. To some degree, the secular supernatural distinction was a Christian in origin and kind of really specific to Christianity. Anyhow. Yeah, so this one, are there any other aspects to how stupid this thing is that I haven't talked about yet? Because just saying it's stupid over and over again is not interesting or useful. I think, let me just review this quote one last time. At least I hope it's the last time. With or without religion, good people can behave well and bad people can do evil, but for good people to do evil, that takes religion. Yeah, I think I've talked about every part of it. It is so impressively stupid. It has just such an impressive lack of awareness of anything about human beings and how they're good or bad or anything, about things like repentance, about things like temptation, things like people falling from what they are and people, becoming better than they were. What religion even is. I mean, like it is about the one thing that this slightly gets right, speaking in generalities, is it is true that if you join a bad religion, that's going to lead you to do bad things because ideas actually have consequences. So, for example, if you become a Marxist, you're probably going to be an awful human being. Marxism is one of the secular religions, more or less, of our time. It's an evil religion. It will lead you into really bad places if you, really follow it. So, yeah, ideas do have consequences. That's kind of the one thing this doesn't really get right, but sort of hints at and is actually true. So, ideas do have consequences. That's something. Until next time, may you hit everything you aim at. If you like this video, then clicking the like button, according to YouTube, will make them more likely to recommend it to others. If you know anyone who might get something out of this video, then it would be kind to share it with them, or just share it on social media in general. And if you'd like to see future videos of mine, you can subscribe. And if you're not in the habit of checking your subscriptions page regularly, then I suggest clicking the notification bell and setting that to always. Because otherwise, subscribing to a channel basically just sort of gives YouTube a hint that maybe it should consider recommending these videos to you, possibly at some point, if they think so. It's a funny world we live in. God bless.